So the socialists always say that capitalism is destroying the planet and the environment. Well, turns out that socialism is actually far worse at doing just that. But before we get into that topic, I do have to say that we're trying our best to spread the truth about socialism out there. But Google and YouTube, they're not doing us any favors. So you can help us get this word out there by liking this video, sharing the video, and most importantly, hitting that subscribe button to our channel. It's the best thing to do to make sure that you get anti-socialism content in your suggested feed. Justin, I came across this article in the Washington Post recently. Venezuela's broken oil industry is spewing crude into the Caribbean Sea. So it shouldn't really come as too much of a shock, but apparently Venezuela is not doing too good when it comes to their oil sector here.
Yeah.
So it says here, Venezuela's once powerful oil industry is literally falling apart, with years of mismanagement, corruption, falling prices, and a U.S. embargo imposed last year, bringing aging infrastructure to the brink of collapse. As the government scrambles to repair and restart its fuel processing capacity, analysts are warning that ruptured pipelines, rusting tankers, and rickety refineries are contributing to a mounting ecological disaster in this failing socialist state. First off, let's just point out that the Washington Post called it a failing socialist state. that wasn't just us. But it goes on. It says the Venezuelan government has not acknowledged the origin of the spill, but said in a statement last month that the Maracoy's animal and plant life has not been damaged. The National Assembly has opened an investigation. Opposition officials have suggested that the refinery's waste pit might have overflowed because of heavy rains and lack of maintenance. So, I mean, Justin, is this a bit of a cheap shot to take at socialism's track record with environment when we're highlighting something that's coming out of Venezuela? What do you think?
No, I think the track record for socialism is terrible on the environment, terrible on virtually everything. And really, it shouldn't come as a surprise to people, because the reality is that fundamentally socialism doesn't work because collective ownership and management leads to inefficiencies. It leads to people not paying close attention. It leads to all the stuff that people are afraid of when they talk about the tragedy of the commons and other things, right? Because ultimately, if property doesn't belong to you, ultimately, if you don't make more money when that piece of property is better operated, when it's run more efficiently, when your business or the business that you're involved in is operating at a higher level, if those things aren't tied to some sort of personal incentive for you, and then why do you care whether it's an efficient system? Why do you care whether it's productive? Because you're supposed to believe in this sort of grand idea of every man should care for the collective, and everyone should work for the collective, and that's just not in line with human nature. And so what ends up happening is, when you have these inefficiencies, naturally you're going to end up having environmental problems as a result of those inefficiencies, and as a result of that neglect that we're talking about. And I think that only gets worse as time goes along, because governments get increasingly more desperate as they fail to provide people with adequate living standards, and they get desperate, and then they rape and pillage the earth as a result of that desperation, and the cycle goes on and on and on and on and on. And so I think we've seen this over the course of human history, and I don't think that there's any reason to believe it's going to change anytime in the near future. Of course, the socialist left loves to talk a good game when it comes to environmentalism, but when they actually have to take care of the environment, they completely screw it up.
Yeah, and I think you hit it right, the nail right on the head when you were talking about like the failure of like the economic system, the price signals and all of that, and especially the tragedy of the commons. So I've got a couple of articles that kind of really back up those concepts. This first one is from PERC, which is the Property and Environment Research Center. Their article is "Socialism is Bad for the Environment." And so it starts off here, it says, as the Soviet Union began to collapse, the socialist economist Robert Hilbronner admitted that central planning has failed economically, but said we needed to, quote, rethink the meaning of socialism. Now, it was the thing that had to emerge if humanity was to cope with the one transcendent challenge that faces it within a thinkable time span. Hellbronner considered this one thing to be the ecological burden that economic growth is placing on the environment. Markets may be better at allocating resources, Hellbronner thought, but only socialism could avoid ecological disaster. So it goes on, it says, not long after, however, it became clear that the socialist economies of Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union were not just economic failures, they were also environmental catastrophes. So this article kind of goes on and explains some of the examples of the ecological disasters. But this article that was published by the Foundation for Economic Education, titled Why Socialism Causes Pollution by Thomas DiLorenzo, has a bunch of really powerful examples of just how bad the Soviet government was with managing the environment of the country. So just a couple of examples I'll read through. It says the Soviet government's imperatives for economic growth combined with communal ownership of virtually all property and resources caused tremendous environmental damage. According to economist Marshall Goldman, who studied and traveled extensively in the Soviet Union, the attitude that nature is there to be exploited by man is the very essence of the Soviet production ethic. A typical example of the environmental damage caused by the Soviet economic system is the exploitation of the Black Sea. To comply with the 5-year plans for housing and building construction, gravel, sand, and trees around the beaches were used for decades as construction materials. Because there is no private property, no value is attached to the gravel along the seashore. Since in effect it is free, the contractors haul it away. This practice caused massive beach erosion, which reduced the Black Sea coast by 50%, between 1920 and 1960. Eventually, hotels, hospitals, and all of the things, a military sanitarium collapsed into the sea as the shoreline gave way. It talks about how there's just examples of just pollution, just taking over their water systems, just absolute nightmare. And this is all because of that concept that you touched on, which is that tragedy of the commons. Nobody is directly in ownership of this stuff. So it just kind of, it just goes where the collective says. And when you're doing this centrally planning, of course, they're not doing it efficiently. So yeah, you just see this all deteriorating away. And then they have examples through China and several other different countries too in this article. And we could probably post it in the show notes, but it's just an example you see over and over and over again. So why do these socialists today think that we need a collective government run system to prevent environmental disaster when we see that exact system that they're going for is the cause of all this environmental disaster throughout history?
Well, I don't know that we can ascribe any sort of logic to
Good point.
the socialist movement. There's nothing in history that indicates that socialism works. So it doesn't work economically. It doesn't work in terms of improving living standards. It doesn't work on human rights. It doesn't work on anything, any of the things that they promise. So, and there's nothing in history that indicates that it does. And so this is just another example of it not working because of all of the things that you and I just talked about. And but really at the heart of socialism, and I think the reason I sort of switch the kind of shift the focus of your question, I don't really know that the proper question is, why do these people believe this? It's not really why they believe it. It's why did they focus on it? And why? Because that's really the reason why people think of environmentalism and socialism together, is because socialists are always talking about environmentalism, even though their system doesn't actually improve the environment. And the reason they're always talking about it is because I think there is psychologically something about people who are attracted to socialism that makes them wildly idealistic.
Sure.
I think wildly idealistic people are attracted to socialism because they want to believe that everything that they see in history, everything they see around them, they want to believe that all of that is worse than what it could be, that things could get better, and they can get better, but that there has to be some radical change that happens, and that will bring about this utopian idea, right?
Right.
And so, and they see that everything through that lens. And so I think that what they believe ultimately is that everything in the world would be better if we didn't have individuals looking out for themselves. If we had people thinking of the collective first, then everyone would be better off. And in one sense, I can kind of understand that, right? People shouldn't be driven predominantly by greed in a lot of ways. I think people should be considerate of other people. They should care about their neighbors. They should, I think, give to charity. I think all of that is valid. I think those are good ideals in some way. But what people have to understand about socialism isn't an encouragement for people to do the right thing. Socialism is requiring people to do whatever it is the collective wants everyone to do. And if the collective decides it's in the best interest of the collective to rape and pillage the earth, then that's what the collective is going, that's what's going to happen. And everybody just has to deal with it. And so ultimately what ends up occurring in all of these systems is, because there are so many economic inefficiencies in socialism that lead to economic hardship, people stop caring about the environment at some point because people become so desperate that they just don't care. And what we've seen throughout the history of human civilization is that there is a clear connection between improvements in the environment and wealth. When people are wealthier, when a society is wealthier, the environment is cleaner, because when people don't have to worry about eating, when people don't have to worry about all of these other things, then they can then turn their attention to the environment. But in socialism, because socialism is associated with economic hardship, it's naturally going to be associated with people not caring about the environment. Because if I'm starving and I'm in bread lines, do you think I care about the trees being torn down at the beach? No, I don't. Right. I care about survival. And so that really is at the core of all of this.
Well, yeah, and that's with the Soviet Union, for example, like they were obviously in direct competition with the United States. They wanted to prove that their system was better than the capitalist system that we have over here. So they couldn't take their foot off the gas when it came to like trying to do stuff that promoted economic activity. They couldn't worry about what the environment was. They couldn't worry about the Black Sea or whatever the example that I gave. They had to keep their foot on the pedal and make sure that they overtook the United States at any cost. And if you think that that mindset would change, like if America were to take on this type of system, like I think you've lost it. Because the people that are in charge of the central planning administration's bureaucracies, they can't have it seem like that people's lives are getting worse off. So they have to keep the pedal to the metal when it comes to that.
Right.
When it comes to just like a really easy to understand example, like just think about like your own house or something. Like you take better care of your like lawn or your household than you would of like some like place that you co-owned with somebody, or even just like a park. Like you see a lot more litter in the park than in like the front lawn of your own house, right? You're more likely to take care of something that you personally own, that is a reflection on you as in your character, for something that's communally owned. So that's kind of like a really simple way to look at it.
Right. Well, and think about how exhausting and difficult it must be to try to manage everything in a society with a very small group of people. What you've essentially done by getting rid of private property ownership, or even limiting it in some fashion, is you've traded in tens of millions of property owners, in some cases hundreds of millions of property owners,
right,
who all understand their own property better than some bureaucrat thousands of miles away. And you've instead made this small group of people make decisions that they really are not equipped to make, that they know nothing about. And that, again, it's whenever you centralize power and authority in any kind of system, you have certain economic efficiencies that result from that, because there's no just one person making a decision, right? A dictator can do whatever he wants.
Right.
But at the end of the day, they're not making good decisions because they don't really understand the complexity of these gigantic economic systems. And and especially in a country like Russia and America, these massive countries with hundreds of millions of acres of land. And how can you manage that effectively by being a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C.? How can you manage that or understand that better than some private property owner who actually lives in Montana or wherever and understands the situation there? You can't. It's impossible. And yet that's what socialists want to do on everything, not just on the environment, but on literally everything.
And when you're operating for like on the greater good or on behalf of the good of the collective, it's really easy to kind of sacrifice the few, right? With the Soviet Union, we have that terrible example of them just basically like, it was Uzbekistan. What was the country that they like just totally like starved to death because they wanted to take all the Ukraine, the breadbasket of the Soviet Union, right?
Yep.
So they all of those people starved to death because taking that food and giving it to the greater good, the collective, it's so much easier to make those just horrifying decisions when you're operating on behalf of the collective versus just making sure that people's individual rights aren't trampled on. So yeah, these things, this goes hand in hand. These aren't like anomalies, like Venezuela. That's not an anomaly in history. The Soviet Union, all these examples, those aren't just these outliers, this fringe stuff. This is like a core piece of why socialism does this. They're connected. They're linked together. You can't separate it. But Justin, that's pretty much all I really want to say on this topic here. I could read off a whole bunch more examples if we really wanted to, but if people want, they can see this in the show notes. Are there any last words you want to say on this topic?
No, sir.
All right, people, if you want to see more content like this, as I said before, you've got to subscribe to our channel. You can find us pretty much on all social media. Facebook, Stopping Socialism. There's a Stopping Socialism TV page there as well. We have Instagram. We have Socialist Twitter. There's a Parler account even for Stopping Socialism. And of course, you can go to stoppingsocialism.com. Justin, where can people find you?
At Justin T. Haskins on Facebook and Twitter.
Thank you all. Talk to you next time.